Now's your chance to get a super cheap Xbox Elite controller. Xbox has a new shoe coming out that you gotta see, and Halo Infinite might have less maps than you think. Let's discuss. So I've been lucky enough to be playing Forza Horizon 5 for the past week, and I won't talk about it for too long because like I've said in the past, I'm not really a racing game guy, and this is my first time playing a Forza game, so there are probably loads of other people out there that'll give you a more detailed review, but for me, this was super refreshing. I've been playing games that have been super tutorial heavy. The last games I completed were Scarlet Nexus and Marvel's Avengers, and they just have like so many tutorials and pop-ups, and with Avengers especially, I felt like I needed to read like 3 user manuals just to get to the title screen. So there was something so nice about just getting dropped out of an airplane and just being like, hey man, just drive wherever you want, man. I was a little intimidated at first because like I said, I'm not a racing game guy. So I was like, I really honestly didn't know what to expect. But I think what the game does really well is make it welcoming to newcomers. Like you can really, if you wanted to, turn all the settings to easy, turn all your enemies or opponents to the enemy drivers. That's not what you call them. You can basically set all the assists to where the car drives itself if you really want to. Me, I started out on average, and then the game, gradually bumped me up. It said, hey, I noticed that you're winning races pretty easily now. Do you want to go to the next difficulty level, to above average? Yeah. Hey, I noticed that you're doing well in above average. Do you want to go to highly skilled? Yeah, so I think it does a really good job of making it a really easy entry point and not holding your hand. But I can also see that for people who really are into the technical side, or people who are really good at the game, I don't know how this works in practice, but I feel like they have a lot of stuff to play with too. I didn't even touch all of like the custom tune-ups that you can do. You can mess with the tire pressure on your car. You can mess with the spring so it adjusts the weight differently. You can adjust like your axle and like the alignment of your wheels. I didn't even get into all of that because I know nothing about cars, and I know pretty much next to nothing on how that would affect the gameplay. And you can even customize like different parts of your car, and again, I did not even touch that. If I wanted to make my car better, I would just say, hey, Forza, suggest the upgrades I need to make my car better, and I just threw money at that and it did it for me. I thought that was really cool. I really love the diversity of the biomes that they have in Mexico. At one point, I'm driving through the jungle. At one point, I'm on the beach, like driving all over these crazy sand dunes. At another point, I'm going into a like densely packed city, kind of drifting in and out of these tight quarters. There's really a lot of variety in terms of the different maps and biomes and stuff, and the map is huge. And that's not even accounting for the change of weather. For example, if it's raining, that totally changes everything from how you drive, the car you pick, whatever. And that's another thing that I think the game does really well. It gives people stuff to do based on their interests, no matter what they are. For example, if you're a really technical racer, if you love the challenge of a race, cranking up that difficulty, and you happen to be able to pull off these pinpoint turns in order to win that require like a physics degree. I didn't figure out how to drift until like 20 hours into the game. Or if you just want to cruise around and kind of look at the sights, take it in, that's cool too. If you want to drive off a cliff as fast as you can and try to make it into a football stadium, the game gives you that option too. And I was like, heck yeah, I want to do that. I think what's really missing for me is the social aspect. There were not a lot of people playing this past week because obviously early access starts on November 5th and then the game officially releases on November 9th. But the people I did run into seemed really cool. I would just drive up to them, honk my horn, do donuts around them, and they were like, oh, and they'd start doing donuts with me. But I will say that there was like a lot of events that I could not do because they required matchmaking. So I didn't even scratch the surface of like what the game has to offer in the base game. On top of, I didn't get to experience all of the multiplayer aspect. Another thing I will say as well is that they do a really good job of making Mexico look like a beautiful, they represent it really well. But I will challenge whoever watches this to count how many times one of the NPC players refers to you as my friend, let's go for a drive, man. We're gonna go, my friend, over here. That's just like one thing that I found really funny. I will say, being a mediocre player at the game really makes you feel like you're this international race superstar. It'll refer to you by whatever name you pick, first of all, and they're constantly hyping you up like, oh, great drift, even if you're like burning out and you completely missed your turn, and you'll get skill points like for going really fast and like barely missing cars and stuff. So that was a really cool sense of progression and, you know, made me feel special. If you want to hear my thoughts about the latest Xbox updates and releases, make sure you subscribe and set your notifications to all. Xbox has another shoe coming out as part of its collaboration with Adidas, so they released one already, and that was based off of the OG era of Xbox. This one has the influences of the Xbox 360 era. And the first shoe that they came out with, I was like, that's pretty nice, you know, that's a nice looking shoe, but I wasn't gonna go out of my way to get it. But this shoe, I was like, ooh, that shoe looks clean. It's like a high top that is predominantly white, gray, and then has green soles on the bottom. And they have a whole bunch of nods to the Xbox 360 console. For example, they have the disc tray right on the strap. They have the Xbox controller button on the outside of the shoe, and then a nod to the vents, the cooling system on the inside of the shoe. You know, those vents that were constantly not working and scarred a whole bunch of gamers, a whole generation of gamers for life with the red ring of death? Yeah, those vents. And I wasn't able to confirm this because I couldn't get a good view, but on the back they apparently have a nod to the removable hard drive from back in the day. So when they were advertising this, they said in order to combat scalpers, they were gonna have people wait in like a virtual waiting room. And I don't know if this is connected, but they also had this link that you can go to that was like in-queue virtual experience, and I decided to check it out. It started out with a video that was like, hey, like scroll through, like you're like waiting in a virtual line. And as you were scrolling through, it was just a bunch of imagery that was meant to invoke what it was like playing on an Xbox in the early 2000s. It was things like the, Xbox 360 avatars and like pictures of different like games and stuff. And they also had a thing where if you found a glowing little box, you can hold and click on it and it would give you prizes. So I was scrolling through for like 25, 30 minutes and I was clicking on these boxes, and pretty much, I must have done this like 8 or 9 times. It was all a free month of Game Pass. So I was like, oh, awesome, I'm gonna get like 8 or 9 months of Game Pass. So I did all of that for like 25, 30 minutes so you would not have to do it. And what ended up happening was, I don't know if I got the months of Game Pass, but I haven't seen anything in my inbox or in my Microsoft account, so I don't know. Maybe they were like, this dude is abusing the system trying to get like a full year of Xbox Game Pass, and maybe they like stepped in and stopped it. But I have not seen my free months of Game Pass yet from my very, 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 very diligent efforts going into the virtual line. So we have a little bit more details on Halo Infinite's multiplayer maps, and this is always such a tough thing when you create something that's part of an established franchise. I feel like people are constantly trying to walk this line of, keeping true to what made the franchise good in the first place, but also trying to take it in a fresh direction. It's always like this line of like trying to appeal to people's nostalgia factor and trying to do something entirely new. But you don't want to do stuff that's too new because you don't want to piss off the people that really liked the old stuff or what made the old stuff good. And in that same spirit, and I think this is a good move, a lead multiplayer designer for Halo Infinite has come out and says, we want to focus on new maps, new player experiences, and not so much on bringing back old maps and porting them over to Halo Infinite. That might rub some people the wrong way, saying like, oh, I wanted to play a new updated version of Valhalla, but the thing about it is, and this is what they were saying in their little press release and their little interview, that the new maps are basically drawing on the old maps for inspiration. For example, Fragmentation, the new big team battle map, is clearly drawing influences from Valhalla. You got 2 bases on either side of this canyon, and in the middle you got like all sorts of like woodsy roads and cover and things like that, and you can launch yourself off of a gravity ramp into the action. So obviously the influences from the old maps are there. Apparently they did try to port over some old maps, but it, quote, did not go well, or it did not work well, is what they were saying. But like I said, I think this is a good direction for them. Leave the old maps behind. Not entirely, right? Maybe they put it as part of a DLC or something, but you know, the Master Chief Collection is there. I know a lot of people are bummed because they just shut down the servers for the Xbox 360 multiplayer support for Halo, but the Master Chief Collection is there. If you really want to go and revisit those old maps, then you have the freedom to do so. No one's taking that away from you. But I think it's nice that they're focusing more on the future, having the same elements that, you know, made us love Halo in the first place, but taking it in a fresh direction, instead of just resting on the laurels of the Halo name and just bringing back old maps and calling it a day, right? Turtle Beach is now accepting pre-orders for this crazy looking controller that they're putting out named the VelocityOne Universal Flight Controller. If I walked into your house and I saw this controller as part of your gaming setup, I would know instantly that you are on a higher plane of existence, because this thing is crazy. If you are making that investment, I'm assuming that you are good enough at Flight Simulator to justify it. So that's a whole nother story. I'm personally trash at that game, just like I am with every other vehicle-based game, so I couldn't even dream of even consider buying this controller. Now, I understand that there's a whole history of flight simulation controllers that I'm not privy to, but this thing looks, like I said, crazy. It has a fully functional yoke, and it's based on the engineers that made the X52 and the X56 controllers, so a lot of quality work went into building this. All that crazy flight controller stuff aside, now we're gonna talk about something that I actually know about. We have a new option for people looking for a cheaper alternative for an Xbox Elite controller. So the Elite series for the Xbox line of controllers runs you about $150 and upwards if you want that premium serious gamer stuff. This controller is made by Power A. It's called the Fusion Pro 2, and it's very similar to the Elite series, but at a much more reasonable price at $90 instead of $150. So like pretty much all third-party controllers, this controller is wired, and in a world that's obsessed with like wireless stuff, wireless earbuds, wireless headsets, outsiders might say that's archaic, that's weird. But what they don't understand is that you will never ever have to worry about recharging your batteries ever again. And they go pretty quickly, no matter if you have a PS5 or a rechargeable battery pack for Xbox. The triggers have 2 stages in terms of trigger stops, and it has like special textures to make sure that you're hitting each distinctively in the heat of the moment. The build seems to be pretty solid, and you can even interchange the faceplates. It comes with 2, a white faceplate and a black faceplate. And the white faceplate, it's gonna be really smooth apparently, whereas the black faceplate will have some front grips if you have really especially sweaty hands. I was honestly thinking about upgrading to an Elite controller after I played Forza, honestly, after I discovered that the way you put the trigger, depending on the pressure, controls how you accelerate in the game. So I thought maybe if I had more control of this, I would be a master. Also, Halo Infinite's coming up, so if you want to get an Elite controller to give you an edge in multiplayer on that, this is the perfect opportunity for you to do it without breaking the bank. Anyway, thanks again for tuning in, guys. Thanks for propelling me to 10,000 subscribers. Thanks for your support. I really appreciate it. I'm super grateful for everyone that's tuned in and watched me rant about Xbox and video games. My name is Ray, for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, and we'll see you in the next video.